Hey guys, Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today, I want to have a bit of a discussion with you. I want to start off by saying, look, I love the Paramilitary 2. I absolutely consider it to be one of the best, most iconic folding knives of recent history and really a modern day classic. Absolutely fantastic knife. Easy to recommend this to anyone, especially if you don't have one. Just a great knife, really is. Now, having said that, what I'm going to share with you today are knives in my collection that if I was forced to pick between them, between either the Para 2 or some other knife, I would pick the other knife. All right, and there are a number of reasons for that. I'll try to go through them to the best of my ability, although some of these are going to be more subjective. Okay, I think we can admit that out front. What I'd love to hear from you guys down below is, one, just your thoughts on the Para 2. I know I have had a number of negative comments about the Para 2, which I do find hard to understand because I really, really enjoy this knife. But I'd also love to hear your list. Are there knives that you think are much better? Especially, are there knives that if your friend or neighbor was saying, hey, I've been looking at knives, I think the Para 2 is the greatest knife ever, I'm going to buy one, would you say, hold on, check out this knife first? Okay. Love to hear that down in the comments. Without further ado, though, let's get into my list, beginning with a knife that probably isn't a huge surprise to anyone, the Cold Steel 8010. Now, I'll admit that these are very different knives, that they're really not even designed for the same purpose. This is more of a heavy duty, occasional carry type of knife, and this is lightened up for EDC. Totally recognize all of that. And yet I do think that the 8010, at least for my purposes, is light enough that I could conceivably see myself carrying this all day, every day, and not carrying anything else ever. And so, I would definitely, and what do I love about this? I love the ergonomics. I love the lock. I love the blade shape. I love the blade grind. All of those things. The hollow grind is fantastic. I know they've switched to a flat ground blade, and I will admit this. I don't know if I would still be saying this if this was the flat ground version. I just don't. I would have to, own it and use it for a while before I could really make that assessment. But for the first knife that I would take over the Para 2, if forced to choose, the 8010 is a pretty easy one for me to go with. Sticking with a bit of a cold steel theme, I'm going to do that for a little bit in this video. The next one is another cold steel. This is the American Lawman. And again, I have said this before, I'll say it again. I think the American Lawman is probably one of the single greatest EDC knives in existence. It's light, it's strong, it's comfortable. This one has a hollow ground CTSX HTP blade, which I adore. These days, the blade's going to be S35 VN and flat ground. Again, can I say, I'm not 100% sure that I would hold this same position if I had the flat ground version. Sorry about that, guys. But given the knife that I own and that I've spent a lot of time using and carrying, I would take this American Lawman over the Para 2. And I would urge anyone who's looking at a Para 2 to check out an American Lawman. This knife brings a lot to the table. Among other things, I guess I should point out, it does cost a little less and it's thinner in pocket. So they weigh very close to the same. So that's not a significant thing to worry about, but this does carry easier because it's so slim. One more cold steel, and again, you guys could probably predict this because you know of my love for the Cold Steel Recon 1, one of the knives that really got me interested in folding knives in the first place. Not this exact version, but this is an iconic knife for me. This is, in terms of hard use tactical folders, I would say the Recon 1 probably stands alone as the single best hard use tactical folder, right? Is it the best EDC? Not necessarily, but can it do EDC stuff? Yes. Can it do EDC plus a lot more? Yes. And that's what I really, really enjoy about it. Super duper comfortable, great blade shape, cuts really well. The blade stock is fairly thin, which actually allows it to slice reasonably well. It is a bigger knife, and that I guess would be the only drawback. But frankly, both of these knives, I have had some shocked reactions when I take out my Para 2. So, that's not so much of a consideration here. And I do feel like the Recon 1 is a little more versatile. And that's probably a bit of a theme here. Okay, I know there are a lot of knives The Para 2 is is not really a heavy duty tactical hard use type of folder. It's more pushing the EDC side of things. Not that it's weak, not that I'm not saying that at all, but it's not quite as heavy duty as most of the other ones that I will be showing you. Now, just because I want to be fair here, the Para 2 is actually not my favorite Spyderco, and that may come across as a little bit of a shock, but my favorite Spyderco is this one right here. This is the Spyderco Manix 2 lockback. And I want to be very specific about this. I actually would not be saying this about any other version of the Manix. I would take a Para 2 over any version of the Manix except this one. And the reason I like this one better is the ergonomics are a little nicer. The others, with them being a little bit thinner, I just don't find them as nice in hand. This knife is perfection in hand, even with the fairly squared off edges. I adore this knife, and because of that, I would take it over the Para 2. It's not quite as fidgety, I get that, but it's about the same weight. It's about as satisfying. The lock, well, it's not, something you're going to be flicking and playing with all the time, is very, very satisfying. And so for all of those reasons, now the sad thing about this knife is it is discontinued, so you can't go out and find one. And that is a little bit disappointing because I think this is one of Spyderco's best things ever. All right, so that was the Manix 2 lockback. Let's pull out some Benchmades. Again, you guys probably know I'm not a huge Benchmade guy. I don't review tons of them. I have reviewed lots of them, but of all the things that Benchmade has ever done, and of all the knives in the world, the Benchmade Crooked River is one of my favorites. I love the combination of, the very classic hunter traditional look with modern materials, modern lock, all of that kind of stuff. Of course, mine has been upgraded with the forged carbon fiber from Rogue Blade Works, and that's on the scales here, as well as the pivot collar. I do have a backspacer that matches, but when I picked up these scales, I picked up a blue backspacer as well as the forged carbon fiber, and I just kind of I enjoy the blue in there, so I've been leaving it, and I do like this in this configuration. By the way, it was a really long wait, and so the carbon fiber clip was a freebie that Rogue Blade Works threw in because it took such a long time to get these scales. Anyway, that's a whole different story, and that's the background on the knife more so than my reasoning. I like the size, I like the toughness of this, I like the look of it, just a little more stylistic. I really like the traditional look here with the bolster. And so, and I tend to be drawn to slightly larger knives. Also, one thing that I have to say about this Benchmade and many Benchmades is that the how would you say this? The action is just as enjoyable. So the axis lock is very, very good, and the deployment on this is so enjoyable, at least as enjoyable as the compression lock here on the Para 2. Now, since we're talking about Benchmades, I should throw in another one. There is another Benchmade in my collection that I would be more inclined to keep around than the Para 2, and that is the Benchmade Super Freak. Similar size, similar weight, similar roll, M4 steel, which I really, really enjoy. The styling on this is very, very cool. Some extra color and just some extra pizzazz to it. Feels fantastic in hand, yeah, for all of those reasons, at least. And probably some stylistic ones and my own biases as well, I would be leaning toward the Benchmade Freak over the Para 2. I've got some higher end stuff that I want to bring in here, but before I do that, let me bring in one that is maybe not expected. This is the Lion Steel M4. So this is actually a fixed blade. I do think it's a pretty nice fixed blade for everyday carry, and I do think it could replace the Para 2 in that role. It's also very comfortable, very attractive, very utilitarian. I mean, this is, the thing I like about the M4 is just it's so balanced. It's a thick, heavy-duty, stocky knife, and yet it still cuts really, really well. I can say I skinned my deer this year with the M4, and it just worked extremely well. So for all of those reasons, I would never obviously want to skin a deer with any of these folding knives that are on the table. So I guess that's a qualification we should kind of throw out there to be totally fair. But in addition to everything else, subjectively, I love the look of this knife. I love the feel of it, and the performance is definitely on point. So for all of those reasons, I would keep the M4 over the Para 2. Now, let's grab something a little higher end and something that perhaps you would, what would you say? These two hold a similar place, I guess, in the folding knife world. This is my Chris Reeve Knives Incosi. And the reason I say these hold a similar place is, when people think of just the most well-loved, the most popular, the most well-known, the most recognized knives available these days, both of these are going to be on the top of the list. And if I'm recommending knives, especially higher-end knives, the Incosi for me is an easy recommend. Now, what I would recommend doing is getting one off the secondary market, right? I wouldn't be going to a retailer and buying one, but Blade Forums has a full forum just for Chris Reeve Knives sales, and you can nearly always find a plain Jane, whatever, 21 or Incosi, or, I'm not sure about a 31. I haven't checked on that, but you can find most of the knives that you would be interested in having on that forum almost any time and for a pretty reasonable price. I think a standard Incosi like this one without the Tanto blade is probably going to run you around $350. That's going to be US dollars, secondary price. And for that money, you are getting something truly fantastic. All right. I'm not going to go into it all here, but the Incosi is just going to last forever and ever and ever and ever. Not that the Para 2 won't, but it won't to the same degree, right? Every part on the Incosi is just meant to be long lasting. It's still a very usable knife. It's still a very carryable knife. It's not like some of the others on the table where, it's much bigger and much beefier and all of that. These are, pretty similar in terms of their bulk and their heft. I mean, the Incosi weighs more, but this doesn't feel like an overbuilt, hard use sort of tactical style knife. All right, so yeah, would I take this over Para 2? Yes. Do I understand that they cost more? Yes, I do. I think if you're saving up your $140 to buy this, save for another couple months and look at something like this. Again, guys, you're not doing anything wrong buying a Para 2. It's a great knife, and I've recommended it to lots of people. And I think if you are not a knife person and you just want one fantastic knife, the Para 2 absolutely fits the bill. Couple more knives to get through that are on the higher end of the spectrum. The next one up is one of my favorite sort of, fancy-ish knives. This is the Ariat Torrent. This is the original one in M390. I think they did a run of these in AEBL. Someone correct me if I've got the wrong steel there. There is another steel available. I've had this for years. I love it. I've cut a ton of stuff with it. It's a little thicker of a grind than the Para, not a whole lot. The ergonomics are nice. The satisfaction of just the overall level of quality that this has, and just I don't know. I love this knife. The action is fantastic. The detent is perfectly dialed in. I find the size and weight and blade shape and the little details all just to be about exactly what I would want from a high-end titanium frame lock. And could this, and if someone were to say, sorry, Kevin, you've got to give up one of these knives, I'm taking one, I would give up this one. I would. That's, I've got one more knife to get to, and then we're going to come back and talk a little bit about the Para 2 and why this video is being made and what that means about the knife. Okay, so there is one other knife that I would put on this list, and that is the XM18. I actually somehow don't have one with me today. You guys are pretty familiar, I think, with that knife, especially these days with the tri-way pivot. And the reasons are, again, it's a little heftier. It has tons of options in terms of, aftermarket scales and hardware and everything like that, which is kind of nice. And again, I feel like it kind of falls into the same realm as the Chris Reeve, where yes, you're paying more, but I think it's delivering something for that extra money you're spending. Now, coming back to this knife in particular, this video is only a thing because this is so good and so popular. And while yes, there are knives that I would keep if I was forced to choose between this or them, thankfully, I'm not forced to choose because this is a really, really great knife. The action is phenomenal. The ergonomics are very enjoyable. The blade is pretty well balanced. The little things that kind of bother me about this is the blade's a little thin. I would like to, I don't know what else you do. I like the blade as it is, but you don't want to drop this thing. You're going to wish you hadn't because it's going to be either reblade or regrind or something. The ergonomics are good, but perhaps not as good as many of the knives that I've had out here. All right. And it's also a knife that doesn't quite inspire as much confidence as some of these others. So having said all of that, it's still EDC perfection. Okay, it really is. The action is great. It feels good in hand. It's easy to carry. It's fast. It's fidgetable. The blade is well balanced for all kinds of different jobs. All right, could it be sort of a tactical folder? Yes, it could. It really is well balanced. Now, I will add one more complaint, and that is the price has gone up on these a little bit in recent times, and that's a little troubling. But otherwise, you've got all of those other options. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to check out the links in the description box down below. I will start, I haven't been putting my Amazon store in there, but I need to start doing that because I do get the odd frequent complaint that the knives that the places that I direct you guys, which is White Mountain Knives and Southern Edge Knife Works, don't always have all the stock, but some of these are also available on Amazon, so I will throw that down as a third option. All right, thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I guess you may as well hit that notification bell as well so you don't miss any of the content. We'll talk to you soon.